What's up, everybody? We're doing another episode of Hillsborough and Hunterdon with my good friend Andrey Espinoza. So Andrey and myself, we met in one of our RIP Dads programs at Newell Strength, and we got to talking. And it turned out, Andrey has his own medical practice as a doctor. We're going to get into that. So Andrey, first of all, thanks for joining me, buddy.
Absolutely. Absolute pleasure to be here, man.
Tell us a little bit just about your background as far as your family, um, where you're living right now, and then we'll kind of dive into some questions to the interview.
Sure, absolutely. Currently I'm interventional cardiologist. I actually grew up in Queens, New York. Made it all the way down to Richmond, Virginia. Slowly made my way back up north. Just kind of never made it there. My whole family still lives in New York, but now I'm a New Jersey native for at least the last 16 years. My wife and I moved here in 2003, 2004. Both our kids here. We've been living in Hunterdon County pretty much throughout that entire time. Initially, I was with a large cardiovascular practice and then realized I wanted to do things a little bit differently, and went out on my own about 5 years ago and probably should have done it 15 years ago. But yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
Very cool. So let's dive into interventional cardiologist for those people that aren't exactly sure what that whole term means. What is that? Like, what exactly do you do at your practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the way medicine works, you go to medical school for 4 years. You then enter into some sort of internship training, which includes your residency, could be 3 up to 4 years. Subsequently, you decide at that point if you want to just go out and practice, general medicine, or you want to subspecialize. I definitely always had an affinity for the heart and cardiovascular conditions. I was an athlete, when I was growing up. Those days are long gone now as I approach 50. But you've given me back my knee. We'll definitely talk about that. But after you finish and subspecialize, I went into cardiology or cardiovascular medicine. Did that for 4 years and got my subspecialty training even within cardiology. So you did do additional training on top of that in order to do what are kind of considered advanced procedures. So, some people might be familiar with stents. Someone has a heart attack, or if you've got a blockage somewhere in the body, we use some good adaptive skills and some really cool technology to be able to restore blood flow to organs pretty much anywhere in your body.
Very cool, man. So let's backtrack to how that was kind of, planted in your head that you had an affinity towards cardiovascular health. You were an athlete. So I know you talked about that when you first joined with me, but what's your athletic background? What were you into? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the good old days where, you actually played every sport. That's no longer the case anymore. But, I was a high school tennis, soccer player. But I was really good at stickball. But the predominance of my athletic career really revolved around soccer. I ended up going to Division I, playing Division I college athletics on scholarship. Played professionally for a while back in the day, well before things like Major League Soccer were around, and so it was a really long time ago. But we played at the highest level that was available in the United States at that time. I played overseas for a while. And subsequently, unfortunately, I blew out my knee very early in that career process, and pretty much ended my career. That's when I had to make the decision: do I rehab my knee, continue on with that life? But then I had that real conversation with my dad, who said, "You're going to need to get a job one day." And, and then basically just went into medicine, by default. It wasn't something initially that I had aspired to do or be a part of. It was something that I kind of, adapted into, so to speak. And then once medicine hit, it took off, fell in love with it, and never looked back.
So you were playing pro soccer before you decided to go back to med school.
Correct. Yeah. Pretty much the summer that I blew out my knee, and I blew it out in Richmond, Virginia. That's when my career ended, and I went almost immediately back to school. I started with summer courses, going back to get all the prerequisites for organic chemistry and biochemistry and all these things that I needed to do to apply for school.
Great, man.
Yeah.
So with soccer, playing at that high of a level, what did you learn from just training for soccer and athletics in general that were able to help you as you went back to med school and then as you built your your career, and then you went off and branched on your own. Like, what did you take from your athletic days?
Oh man, everything, everything. I still to this day try to impart that, knowledge, which is kind of funny when you would get a little bit older, you do feel a little bit wiser and you realize actually you've lived a pretty good life and you have a lot to share with other people. And, being an athlete, as you know, um, it's the type of thing that not only gives you physical confidence, it gives you emotional confidence, it gives you a tremendous amount of mental toughness. It allows you to realize how far you can push your body and then go even beyond that, and you're going to be just okay. And so all those things that I learned, and probably the biggest one I would say, because I was involved mainly in a team sport, understanding that, life doesn't occur in a bubble. Most things are done. You can succeed technically on your own, but in reality, your successes are always shared. It's very unusual to suggest that anybody becomes ridiculously successful in anything that they do, whether it's the support and love of your wife and your kids, or, it's the people that you surround yourself with that enable you to kind of continue to escalate your game, and it's always now more than ever trying to inspire the people around me. So even though they may not have achieved the level of education that I have, I kind of always view people the same way. I mean, you're only good as your weakest link, whether that's on a football field or a soccer pitch, or I'm in my office. And so that's kind of how we approach things in my practice. And yeah, I think everything that I am and everybody that I've interacted throughout the course of my life has been directly impacted by all the, I think, positive attributes that I acquired over that time period.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting how you related to building the team within the business, and then even the family structure and how important that is. So 5 years ago, you decided to go out on your own, right?
Yep.
What prompted that decision? Because people, I mean, you had a, I'm sure you were very busy. You were very, let's say, comfortable doing what you were doing within. Was it at the hot? It was in a practice.
Correct.
Okay, so what made you decide 5 years ago to say, "Hey, I'm going to do this"?
Yeah, it's like it's like any marriage. You're part of an organization of really talented, kind of high performing people. Um, you realize that there's a certain way that you want to approach your practice, your profession. Sometimes you're in direct alignment with the people that you work with, and sometimes you realize that unfortunately the paths they're just never going to cross. And so there was a lot of that. I also realized I wasn't happy because I wasn't fulfilling the things that I really wanted to do. Medicine, as you know, it's very traditional in a lot of ways, and and it continues to go down a path that I can't say that's a faulty one, but it's definitely one that does not, it's an institutionalized thing where it's really difficult to change people's minds, to get them to open their mind and make them realize that, yeah, I understand you've been doing this for 20 years, but there's a different way that we can look at this. And so for me, I still practice obviously very traditional medicine because there are a lot of patients, unfortunately, that need that. But I also wanted to explore, outside of that, things that were more germane to my athletic background, discussing physical fitness and focusing more heavily on nutrition, and not even so much for my patients, that was without saying, but even for myself. I needed to be more responsible for what I was doing in order to have an impact on people. It's difficult to try to suggest things to people when you yourself are not, carrying that flag.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been awesome to connect with you just because you have that approach. Well, yeah, you're going to treat people traditionally, but I know from when we've done seminars and stuff, and maybe you could speak about this, your mindset is get the person healthy. Don't just treat the symptoms longer than you need to, right? Like,
Right.
to tell us about that part of it, because a lot of these people will go on medication, right? And they'll stay on when they're going to a regular, clinic. They'll stay on these medications for their whole life.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your view on that and what your approach is with that.
Yeah. It's funny. Recently, it's a great question. I've been having a lot of conversations. I mean, every day we have them, 30, 40 times a day, with a different patient walking through the door. And, even with, the scale thing, traditional doctor's office, you walk in, the first thing they do is stick you on a scale. And people get so focused on the number and their whole life revolves around the number. And I keep trying to tell them, listen, it's not about the number, it's about your health. You have to start looking at the bigger picture. Generally speaking, if you do the right things, if you exercise regularly, if you're, intuitive about your nutrition, understanding nobody's perfect all the time, the number will come. The number is kind of like the downstream effect of all the good things that you do that are so vitally important, to truly make people have, a concept of what overall health means. You don't have to be skinny to be healthy, and that's, in our society, it's a really, really difficult thing. To be honest with you, and I've told you this before, I hate medications. We as a country do a phenomenal job in the acute setting, and that you can never argue, right? You got an allergic reaction to a bee sting, you're going to need some epinephrine. You can't kind of, get around that. So those things, yeah, we do a really good job. You have a pneumonia, we're really great with antibiotics. You come in with a heart attack, we got clot busting medications. And so that's a different substrate, but the predominance of what we deal with, as you see, and kind of your expertise is in that chronic management, of an individual throughout the course of their life, giving them the tools and the habits to do the right thing that ultimately is going to result in them coming off of drugs that, look, you can do the math. You look at the statistics of how many people get admitted to the hospital on a yearly basis from medication side effects. How many people take a drug that ends up causing them diabetes. It's just a really difficult thing to swallow. And I tell people, look, you can swallow pills. That's easy. I can write your prescription all day, every day. Or you can do the hard part, which is take a little personal responsibility, and get yourself going. And if you do the right things, again, listen, some people have a genetic predisposition. They're going to get cancer no matter what we do. They're going to have a heart attack no matter what we do. Some people just get, dealt a really bad, set of cards. But most of us, I would argue that we can control to a large extent what ultimately transpires throughout the course of our life, what ailments eventually affect us. Listen, I tell people all the time, listen, you eat a really good, healthy meal, how you feel hours after. You feel good, you sleep better, you can think more clearly, you're actually a nicer human being. Right? You have a crappy meal and it's everything but that. So for me, yeah, like you said, it's about trying to get people to understand that, medicine is not what medicine is supposed to be. Medicine is the things that we never talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, that's one of the things I admire about you is, that's almost a year ago, probably more than that now.
Mm-hmm.
But when you came in, I think part of it from talking with you, Dan, was to really set the example, for your clients, really getting into some high level training, not that your clients have to be high level training, but you made a commitment saying, okay, I'm this is what I believe. I'm going to show people I believe this personally. So how do you fit that in? Like, I know how busy you are. I want to talk a little bit about your schedule. How do you fit in your workouts with your family, with running the practice, being on call? Why? Let me start with this. Why do you make sure you fit them in?
Because I can't be who I am. I can't be who I want to be. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better friend. I'm a better doctor. So what I do when I'm lucky enough to get, to Newell Strength at 5 o'clock in the morning, that I know that 45 minutes to 50 minutes that I spend there will carry me throughout the remainder of the day and allow me to do everything I want to do mentally, physically, and emotionally. It gives me the energy to be able to do all those things. So I can do it without it, but I was miserable before, absolutely miserable, and I did it, but I was not a happy person because I wasn't happy, and it was really about myself, and I wasn't taking time for myself. So I was making time to do call, drive the kids all over the planet, soccer, tennis, swimming, dance, whatever, trying to keep my wife happy, and every now and then do a date night, practice medicine 24 hours a day. I was doing all those things before, but I wasn't happy about it because I wasn't happy with myself. So within that 18 months now that I've been working out there, it's been a transformation, but I was making excuses like everybody else, and I had been there, I'd been an athlete. I knew what I needed to do. But as you know, you get to this part in your life, sometimes you need help, and you need some other professional to be like, listen, it's hard for me to go out for a run. I can't go onto the track anymore. My knee just doesn't do it. So I needed to learn in the 21st century a little bit better how to be, a better, purveyor of physical fitness, realizing I can't, and I won't be able to do what I had done when I was 15 to 25 years of age, but I can still do it in a much more efficient manner and get everything that I need to get out of it. I think I told you this. I wish that I had this program when I was, quote unquote, a professional athlete, because I would argue, looking back, I had no clue what that meant. Now, if I had this sort of thing, I would have been 10 times the athlete that I was if I understood really how to work out.
Yeah, and it's funny. We've heard that from some of our high-level athletes, former athletes. They've all kind of, had that same thought, if they had it way back when. And so you make a commitment to that. But now, with the schedule you're keeping, I mean, you start the days you work out. I know you're getting up at, I don't even know what time you got to be up at, to make it over there in your work day. So I want to start talking about the practice a little bit. What time do you normally work till?
It depends. Thankfully, getting up early, as you know, it's that whole early bird gets the worm thing, man. I've always loved to get up early, and being able, if I work out at 5, it's the most productive day in the history of the world. I've done more by 3 o'clock than most people do all day. But yeah, I've got commitments to the hospital, so I'll usually round in the hospital. So I'll come home, shower, grab a cup of coffee, head to the hospital. After the hospital's done, then I head over to the office, which opens at 7:30 in the morning. So then we start seeing patients there, or if I'm doing procedures up in Morristown or whatever. And then usually throughout the course of the day, we'll get consults in the hospital. So then we have to go back after, 5 o'clock, 5:30 when the office closes. Then I go back, finish up rounds. And, there's some days, thankfully, there's not a lot of sick people in the hospital. So COVID was a really interesting time, understanding that it's still going on, but the whole hospital was just COVID patients. There was nobody else in the hospital. So people were, even if they were having a heart attack, they weren't even coming in because they were so afraid. But yeah, I get back and, I always make sure that I make time. I carve out time. That's the beautiful thing about owning my own practice is if my kids got soccer practice at 6, I take that time. I make sure my last patient's at 4:15 or 4:30 so I can get them home, get them there. Even if I know I got to go back to the hospital later, I get to practice, I can be with him. Same thing with my daughter. And then I drop them off at home, say goodnight, head back to the hospital, then head home, do a little work on the computer and then pass out and day starts all over again. If we don't get called back in again.
Yeah, right. And the energy to sustain that, it's got to come from the passion. I mean, I don't think people can just grunt their way through a schedule like that. What's keeping you driven at this point in your career? What's driving?
Oh man, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world, man. I think, and that's one of those things, like, I think I couldn't imagine having ever done something else. And, as life has it, thank God I blew my knee out. I would never be where I am today. I would have played professional soccer until I got burnt out and probably would have ended up like a lot of my other friends, which, no, absolutely no disrespect for them because they love what they do. But I probably would have been coaching and, and doing those sorts of things. And I probably would have been happy. But, this is more of a calling. I feel like, and my team, I try to get them to realize this. We change somebody's life every single day. And most of the time it's in a positive way. And having the ability to have that impact on another human being. And, even if it's honestly, it's funny, again, I go back to this COVID thing, people coming into the office, I shake their hand, I'm still shaking hands and people like, wow, that's the first time somebody's touched me in 3 months, and I'm like, you're damn right, and I'll hug you if you want to too, because you got to have some common sense about it. And so, for me, medicine was never about, and never is to this day. It's not about what necessarily we do to people. It's the interactions, it's the community, it's societal stuff. Most of what I do, I would argue, it's not me writing a prescription or putting a stent in. It's about that kind of, that human effect of having a conversation, listening to them, having respect for people as they get older and they know exactly what path they want to take. And just making sure that they know there's a place that they can always reach out to where people are always going to be there for them. So to me, medicine is about the interaction, has nothing to do with medicine.
Yeah, and it's I'll tell a couple short stories about you, so people really understand that. You go to most doctors, everybody has this experience. They're in and out. The doctor doesn't really have time of day for them.
Right.
So a couple people in my life, right? We had my father-in-law, Dave, reach out to you. He reached out to me last year. He was a nervous wreck. He had gotten some bad news or something, and said, "Do you know anybody that I could talk?" And you talked to him that same night. I said, "As a matter of fact," I said, "let me try to connect you with Andrey." So Andrey, guys, took the time. It was the nighttime. It was like 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. To call my father-in-law, talked to him for like 15 minutes. My father-in-law called me back. He was so relieved, so at peace. And then my friend Cynthia recently, had some issues, and they're like family to me and Devin. And Andrey said, "Just give her my number." And I saw her last week. She said, "I talked to Andrey," and she was raving about it. And there's another gentleman, I won't mention his name, from the gym. So this one's really interesting, guys. He came in. He was doing the Panda Challenge, short fasting program. Coach him. He says, "Kyle, I had a little bit of a pain. Nothing major from what he's telling me." Said it was, kind of went away. My doctor had scheduled me to see a cardiologist, and I said, "Did you go yet?" He said, "No, I don't really have any connections to this person, whoever he was going to go see." And I said, "Well, let me, just to be safe, let's see if you could talk to Andrey." And then you texted me, about, I know he had his surgery Monday.
Mhm.
Basically saved this guy's life. He had to have open heart surgery, and you just taking the time to talk to him, meet with him, diagnose him. It would have been so easy for, not that I'm a medical professional, but it's so easy if I didn't know how you were to just say, it's probably nothing. Don't worry about it. So literally saved this guy's life. So, I mean, Andrey, guys, really does take the time and he cares about the patient as a person,
Yeah.
which is just so refreshing, man. So what, I got a couple finisher questions because I know you're on call.
Oh, good.
What do you like to do as far as hobbies when you're not working? Like, what gets you excited? What gets you really happy?
Oh man. Right now, I mean, still the thing that I've always enjoyed is reading, very
Read.
much like you. I love to read. I'm one of those kind of voracious appetite kind of guys. I mean, I grew up, every Sunday, my dad got the Sunday New York Times and we would just sit there and I would just watch him read. I didn't read it. So I formed that habit like really early on in life. And I would argue I probably never read anything up until I got to medical school that had anything to do with school. I just read things that I enjoyed. So I loved comic books when I was younger. Now I just, anything I can get my hands on that can expand my mind, because the older I get, the more I realize how little I know. And the second I close my mind down, I realize I'm just being ignorant. And, the only way that I can get through my day is realizing, it's just made me a different person. So I really, really enjoy reading. And like any other parent, I'm addicted to my kids right now. I mean, the time is flying by. My daughter's 15, going on 30. My son is 12, and, he's growing up quick. And, my wife and I are looking at each other like, man, another 5 years, they're both gone. I left my house when I was 16. I never went back. So, there's right now, I'm just trying to soak up the time, and spend every little last time. I think, again, COVID-esque, you go to this pandemic thing. I think it was, in so many ways, it's such a horrific thing, right? I mean, it goes without saying. At the same time, it allowed, I think, everybody the opportunity to pause,
Yeah.
and say, wow, there's some good things about what's transpiring right now, because
Sure.
I'm actually able to spend some time with the people that I actually love. And that's, that we don't have that time usually. So those 3 months where things really quieted down, I mean, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And I said, wow, I wish life could be like this all the time. Obviously, minus the pandemic, you hate
Yeah.
the way that it came about, but it gave, I think, everybody an opportunity to really check themselves and say, wow, maybe I don't really need to work 7 days a week. Maybe I don't need to take that flight, so yeah. So between my kids, man, and reading, I'd say those are the two most compelling things that I do right now.
Yeah, and that's great perspective you have. I never did. I went down. I'm of the same mindset, man. There's definitely a lot of blessings with it, and So that the reading aspect, right? That ties into a question I always like to ask people. If I ask you about your favorite one or two books, what comes to mind?
Oh gosh, there's a book that that I think everybody should read. I can't remember the title. I can actually probably pull it up on my my Amazon. But it's about generic drugs.
Yeah,
It's about generic medicines, how it even came to being, you know, where they're manufactured and produced, and all the poison that's in them. And it's probably one of the most, you know, actually, I think I posted it on my Facebook site. You can go there and check it out. But wow, you know, that book kind of, you know, takes you to another place because you realize everything that you and I talk about all the time. Not only does it make sense kind of just, you know, at the 20,000 foot level, but in reality, when you see what goes on and the way these medications are produced, you know, they're not done, you know, to make you healthier. They're basically done to sell you a product and probably arguably, you know, are killing you at a faster rate than, you know, the
yeah,
medical condition you're taking them for.
yeah.
You know, and then I would probably say one of my favorite books of all time was Siddhartha, you know, which is kind of more of a religious undertone, you know, journey, you know, of a man throughout his life, and kind of just touches on those points about, you know, interacting with people along that journey, you know, as you know, meet these challenges, you know, how you deal with adversity, how you deal with overabundance, you know, how do you handle gratitude and jealousy? Like it's one of those
Yeah.
great ones. Yeah, it's by Herman Hesse,
Okay.
and that one, that book, and it's a pretty easy read. It's one of those old school paperback ones that you can get through in a couple of days. And yeah, it definitely always impacted me. And you know, it's one of those things that you always, you don't necessarily quote the book, so to speak, but it kind of brings you back to that thing again, that human nature thing that we talk about. You know, how do we deal with that daily struggle? You know, anytime we're faced with a challenge or adversity, and talks about adaptation and things like that. And you know, and now I think it's probably more relevant than ever, you know, based on what everybody's going through right now, which is hell. And you know, the ability to adapt in these circumstances, you know, under this sort of duress that people are not used to dealing with. You know, you can see a lot of people struggling, and then some people are thriving, and then there's everybody else in between, and we just don't know what the future holds. So
That's great, man. I'll get to read both of those. I'll put one up off your Facebook page. Um, if you could go back, this is the one I like to finish with, to your 20-year-old self. What advice would you give to 20-year-old Andrey?
oh man, you know, it's funny because when you look back, you know, I think I told my mom this over the weekend. My mom was out and just sitting by the pool, and I wish I had those days back. Right? I think that's the one commonality of anybody as you advance in life. You look back because you could have always done something different. You could have behaved a different way. You know, you wouldn't have burned that bridge with that friend that you wish you still had. You wouldn't blown up a relationship. Yeah, I mean, I would say if I had the ability to go back, I wish I had then more humility, more respect for other people's opinions. You know, when you're young and you're invincible, you think you got it all figured out. And I try to impart that upon my kids, letting them know that everything I do for them is out of love. It's coming from a good place, and there's a lesson to be had, but you have to realize what that lesson is. Um, so yeah, I mean, looking back, I think I could have been, and I know I would have been a better person, you know, if I had the ability to have more patience, you know, with people. And honestly, if I would have worked harder. Like I said, I could have been, I think, 10 times the athlete that I was, but because it came very naturally for me, and I was very good, you know, at what I was, I didn't have to work very hard for it, right? It's like the worst story in the world. Too much talent, right? The work ethic, clearly, it spawned upon me once I went to medical school. But if I had drawn upon that same thing when I was 16, 17, and I was less interested in, you know, in spending time with my friends, doing all kinds of wasteful stuff. And listen, that stuff's important too. But at the same time, I think to myself, my God, like, you know, all these people that were trying to send me messages, they were trying to share with me their own experiences. They were trying to impart knowledge, you know, not because of their own selfish interest is what you think it is, right? You think, oh, it's all about them. No, they're doing what I do to people now, is which I'm telling you, listen, I learned my lesson. I've been through this before. I know how this plays out. You know, so if I had that ability to do those things, yeah, I would definitely have a long talk with my younger self, you know, you know, and just try to make that young man, you know, realize that life's a hell of a lot more than just you.
Great advice, man. Great advice. But we do have younger people that listen to this, so that's good to hear. Now, as far as people that are looking, like, who's your demographic, your ideal client? Like, so when people want to reach out to you, they'll know, okay, he's my guy. Who comes to?
Um, yeah, I think, you know, for men in particular, you know, once you get in kind of that 35 age range, you got to at least start to think about it, because most young, healthy people don't go to doctors for good reason. They don't need to. But, you know, as you saw, you can have some really young people, you know, have a lot of really bad things going on. You know, and a lot of it usually depending on how you lived your life. You know, if you were a smoker, if you're one of these people that can't stop the sugar addiction, you know, it's always a good thing to come in and at least have the conversation, and just start talking about it, you know, just like you do, right? I mean, the first time I went in, sat down with you, you know, I think you asked me the question, I think it was 7 times, you know, what do you want for yourself? You know, and I think the first 6 times I was kind of doing this thing, bouncing around, you know, realizing, oh, he's actually really interested in what I need to do, because he can't help me unless he understands. So it finally hit me. And yeah, so it's that sort of conversation, which is, listen, what do you want the rest of your life to look like? You know, because if you keep going down this path, you know, that we know where that goes, or we can start making those kind of, you know, minor flight adjustments now. So, you know, when you end up landing where you want to be, you're going to be okay. And it's, you know, we speak, you know, to things that you've said, that you've taught, you know, things that, you know, I talk about intermittent fasting, oh my God, all the time, and trying to get people understand like how important the concept is, even if you do it for 12 hours. I mean, if you can do 16, great. If you do it for 3 days,
Yeah.
you can do it for 12 hours, I'm happy, you know, but
Yeah.
people don't know what that is, right? Because no one's ever told them that's okay to do, right? The society tells you you got to eat 3 meals a day, you know, you got to snack in between, you know, and arguably, you know, that's not correct. You know, that's not correct. It's just what, you know, what's been fed to us, so to speak, you know, and it makes people really, really rich. But in reality, it does nothing for our bodies, you know, just the opposite of what we want it to do. So that demographic, anybody over the age of 35, especially guys, you know, women always happy to see as well, because some women obviously can succumb to some of these medical conditions early on. But thankfully, women up until the point that they're, you know, postmenopausal, they're really protected very well, you know, with their estrogen hormones and so forth. So it's very unusual for them to develop cardiovascular disease at an early age. But if you got a really strong family history, if you know you're not doing the right thing and you're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, I mean, you know, all that stuff goes out the window. You know, you got to come in and at least, you know, get somebody to talk to you about it.
Right, man. And what's the best way for these people? I'll put this in the show notes, but if they want to reach out, making an initial appointment with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with your office?
Yeah, plenty of ways. You know, they can go on our website, you know, at Advanced Heart and Vascular Institute of Hunterdon. And they can send us an email. They can call the office, which is open 7:30 to 5:30 every day, except the weekends. I'm a big believer, no weekends, no nights, you know, because that's the only time I might get a little reprieve. But, and then obviously if anybody reached out to you, I mean, I'm really good like that. And you can have someone just send me a text message. And, you know, I always like to talk to somebody first anyway, just to get a feel and try to point them in the right direction. You know, and happy to have a 15-20 minute conversation. That's one thing I have a lot of, which is I drive a lot. So in that car ride, you know, I can call 10 people and just have a conversation like this and say, hey, listen, you know, what's going on? And, you know, at least put sometimes just a lot of times just putting people's minds at ease.
Yeah.
Because they get afraid, and I understand. So like you said, I mean, I tell the medical students all the time, you know, to your point earlier, you know, when we take off that white coat or the stethoscope, we are no different, right, than the person that's standing in front of us. So what makes you think, you know, you can behave like that? You know, because sometimes I get upset with the trainees, you know, they get this kind of hierarchical thing. Well, I'm the doctor thing. Well, no, you're a human being and a person first. You happen to be gifted, yes, of your own, you know, really hard work, you know, of knowledge that you can now impart and help other people. But at the end of the day, you go home just like everybody else does. You know, you piss in the same toilet, you know, you eat the same food. And so that's really, really important for people to understand is that, you know, we are no different. We just acquired a knowledge base that's just different than what other people have and they're
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, it's great, man. And we'll definitely have to do, you know, parts 2, 3, and 4 of this, because then we could dive into some of the different weird science stuff you and I like to
Yeah.
talk about.
Oh man, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be cool, man. So we'll do that. Maybe we'll plan that for like early September. And I'll
Cool.
get to leave one of the copies of the book for you at the gym.
Awesome.
Thing. And then I'm just going to bring this to an end. So give me 1 second, Andre.